following takes place between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m.
Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, November 15, 2019, and I know that because I am looking at the screen that I updated this morning. Yes, that's right. I got the dates right today. So, folks, welcome to the Friday edition of Full Press Coverage Radio Live. I am Ian Glendon, and I am joined, as always, by Mr. Mike Debate, Mr. Rhode Island himself. Mike, how are we doing today?
La, la, la. Doing very well, my friend. Starting to feel a little bit better physically, and things are progressing in the right direction. And it actually is going to be about 50 degrees here in Rhode Island today. So yeah, Mr. Rhode Island, definitely. Feeling the love for the weather today. Not so much tomorrow. Back down to a high of 33. So welcome to New England, folks. That's what it's like living up here. Those of you that do know it, and you know it sucks. Those of you like my friend down there in the beautiful, sunny capital of the world in Florida know that this is a great time of year to be down there. So I envy you, brother, but you know what? I'm happy for you.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, yesterday it was about 50 degrees and raining all day. So, it's not always sunny in Florida. It's always sunny in Philadelphia, but
absolutely,
not this Sunday.
Not this Sunday. I was just
going
to say, not this Sunday. No. Although that ruins Lane Johnson's fun, and you hate to see that. No one wants to see it. Lane just wants to have fun. He just wants to have fun. Unbelievable.
I'd say we could start there, but of course we had a football match last night.
Yes, we absolutely did.
Yes, it was. The game was interesting. Somewhat. The actions towards the end of the game were obviously the big talking point, and we're going to jump into that because I have a pretty strong opinion on that, and I thought it was very bad for all the parties involved, but especially obviously Myles Garrett, and again we're going to get to that in a minute. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Screw it. We'll just jump into it now because I was gonna say we could talk about the game, but you know what? Look, the game was. I had a little bit higher hopes that it was going to be a little bit more entertaining. I think it was impressive to a point that the Browns were able to go in and do something they haven't done in I think 5 years, and that's beat Pittsburgh and beat them. With their backs against the wall. Obviously, the Browns are teetering on. I mean, again, we will elaborate more on that towards the end of this discussion, but the Browns are teetering a little bit more on another lost season. So this was a huge must-win, where I think the Steelers are playing with a little bit of house money here because, again, no one expected them to be 5-4 coming into this game. So them losing, yeah, they needed to win, but I don't think it was as shocking or as do or die for them. So, look, again, the Browns did what they had to do. They had to win this game, and give them credit. They did do that, but it still gives me no faith in this team. I mean, they're going to have to do a lot for me to change my mind because we're not just talking about a bad 9-week period. We're talking about the entire franchise history of this team failing to reach those expectations, and so far this Browns team still looks like a team that's going to fall quite a bit short of those lofty expectations that they had coming into the season. So what were your thoughts just on the game at first, and we'll get into the incident that happened towards the end of it?
Well, I think I agree with you, and I think you hit some great points. This was a big win for the Browns. I mean, they came into this game knowing that they could not leave the stadium last night without a victory, and credit them. They got it. Baker Mayfield made some throws when he needed to. They made some defensive plays when they needed to. The Pittsburgh Steelers did not have a good game, and the Browns capitalized on it. And I think that in so many ways, that would have been the storyline this morning, is the Browns somewhat saved their season, maybe not put themselves in a position to be able to be in the hunt for the playoffs, but at least salvage some sort of respectability, and maybe even Freddie Kitchens' job and buy him a little more time, or maybe even another year in Cleveland to see what he can do. If he was able to turn around what really looked like a complete implosion in Cleveland and have them win more games than they've lost in the second half of the season, then you have to start wondering and say, well, maybe Freddie Kitchens is not as bad as we all thought he was. Maybe he deserves one more shot to see what happened. But last night, 8 seconds left in the game, just it's mind-boggling to me that a professional like Myles Garrett, and I understand he's a young player, he's an emotional player, but you're a professional, and there is no excuse for something like that. You do not take your helmet off and wave it around and try to club the guy in the head, and that's exactly what he did to Mason Rudolph. So it looked like something out of the WWE. I mean, it really was that type of brawl, and I mean, I don't understand. I don't see how there's any suspension that's coming from Myles Garrett that doesn't include him being on the shelf for the rest of the season. I just don't see him getting anything less than that. And in my opinion, he shouldn't get anything less than that.
No, I mean, again, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, the talk of suspension begins with gone for the rest of this year. What happens afterwards, I don't know. But people are sitting there saying like, oh, things happen in the pile. People get physical. They've shown clips of other people fighting, but this crossed such an egregious line that, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he has to be gone for an extended period of time, because not only did he rip the helmet off, which is bad enough, but at the very least, it's let's see. It's understandable if not condoned. Taking a little line from Shawshank Redemption. Okay, ripping the helmet off. It's a bad act, but you know what? It happens. However, using that helmet to swing and swipe and hit another player in the head, to me, it just. My first thought was Marty McSorley. And for those of you who don't know that name, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that don't, because not only he's a hockey player, but this incident occurred almost 20 years ago now. But he took his stick and deliberately swung and hit another player in the face with it, and he was done. He was never to be seen again on NHL surface. It was not something that you'd expect anyone to do. He was certainly emotional, and he reacted the way he did. I'm talking about Marty McSorley, but it doesn't justify what he did, because you're taking it beyond within the sporting world realm. Like, there's certain liberties you're afforded within professional sports in particular that you're not in the real world. I mean, if you go up and hit someone in the face with your fist in football, you get ejected and you get fined. In the real world, you get charged for assault. So, I mean, there's certainly a difference between the two. There shouldn't this leeway between this. I mean, this just crosses the line. This is completely out of the world of sports. I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that, especially when, I mean, thank God Mason Rudolph is all right, because that could have gone so much worse because of obviously the helmet being swung by a very powerful person and hitting Mason Rudolph in the head. This could have been absolutely awful. So look, he's got to be done for at least the year, or at least the rest of this season, and then maybe then some, because again, the NFL has to act on this.
Yeah, without question. And you make an interesting point about this going beyond this season, and I think you definitely make a valid point about this possibly having to go beyond this season in order to send a message. I mean, you saw so many players come out last night. Even Baker Mayfield called it inexcusable, and Odell Beckham Jr. saying that there's no place for that in the NFL. Cameron Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers was really heated about it last night. And you can definitely understand why.
Actually, yeah, that's actually a good segue. So I have Baker right here, actually.
Why it started, but it's inexcusable. I don't care, rivalry or not, we can't do that. That's kind of the history of what's been going on here lately, hurting yourself, and that's just endangering the other team. That's inexcusable. He knows that. I hope he does now. It's tough. we'll see.
Mason Rudolph.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely great. Yeah, no, that was a great that was a great soundbite to play this morning, and you could hear it. You could just hear the disgust in his voice, and something that I picked up on that in a little bit. And again, the most important thing is the health of everybody and the safety of everybody involved. And we are glad that Mason Rudolph ended up being okay, but that also was a blow to the Cleveland Browns logistically as well. This is a team right now that is starting to put wins together. They look like they were starting to maybe claw out of that doldrum that they were in earlier on in this season and playing positively and maybe even stringing some wins together. Who knows what could happen in a wide open AFC right now, where none of these teams that are kind of in the hunt are really establishing themselves as having a stranglehold on those wild cards. You never know what could happen. And Cleveland's got talent on both sides of the ball to maybe be able to make something happen. Without their most prolific defender now for the rest of the year, can almost kiss those goodbye. And that is definitely a source of frustration, I'm sure, for Baker as well, beyond what we saw on the field and just the barbarism that ensued during that brawl.
No, and that's a great point. I mean, look, this is a team, again, we opened the show talking about how they are desperate to win because, again, they have to win. If they want to have any hopes of the playoffs, they have to win these games. And again, credit to them. They did do that. However, this just doesn't have you lose Myles Garrett, that changes a lot on your defense. You still have talent, obviously, on offense, but you made a great point. It's just you really limit yourself defensively, and you put yourself in a bind because now you're basically stuck because you can't replace his production on the field, and that's just something that you can't. That's just something that you can't overnight fix. So he's put his team in a bad spot. Big picture, this just still continues to speak about how undisciplined this team is, and that's a Freddie Kitchens issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Browns winning yesterday might have been the worst thing that happened to him because, like you said, it kind of maybe bought Freddie Kitchens a little bit more time. However, it just doesn't. To me, it just doesn't. It's not the right thing. I mean, I think the Browns should move on from Freddie Kitchens. I think if they had lost this game, I think it makes it a whole lot easier to do so. However, maybe this incident helps push this because he didn't have quite the best response to the whole situation either. He kind of said, "Oh well, helmet to helmet incidences happen all the time," so that's kind of a bit of a cop out. But before we continue on that, here's Myles Garrett talking about the incident last night.
Let's do that final 8 seconds, that final play for you.
Really don't. I made a mistake. I lost my cool, and I regret it. It's going to come back to hurt our team. The guys who jumped in the little scrum. I appreciate my team having my back, but it just never got to that point.
Well, I don't know if I actually got that heard across the air, so I apologize if you guys didn't hear it. I think you did, but just in case you didn't, we just played Myles Garrett, obviously reacting, saying he made a mistake and lost his cool, which that's an understatement. Let's put it lightly. Losing your cool is
vast understatement. Yeah. I mean, you can understand, the frustration of a player. And look, I mean, we've all played football at some level, albeit never at the level that Myles Garrett is playing at in the pros. But, you get involved in a scrum and a pile and stuff like that. And I can imagine, having played, high school football and been a very good high school football player myself, but I did play. And it was a situation where you hear things in a pile, you see things in a pile that are they are different than what you see on television, folks. It's not all sunshine and rainbows in there, but there's never an excuse to do what he did. Absolutely never an excuse. And someone at a professional level needs to have more self-control than that. He mentioned that it's going to come back to hurt his team. He's very lucky this didn't come back to seriously hurt Mason Rudolph or anybody else that could have been in his pathway for someone that could have taken a hit like that. That is just... It's just ridiculous to even, think about the fact that something like that happened on an NFL football field last night.
Mm-hmm. And again, this puts the NFL squarely in the focus because look, their whole thing is they're trying to help and fix head injuries and prevent head injuries. And this is an incident where a player swings a helmet intended to protect players' heads directly at another player's head. Therefore, I mean, again, we're lucky he avoided any sort of serious injury, any sort of, again, I mean, who I don't even want to speculate as to what could have happened had that helmet really connected with the side of his head or maybe the back of his head. We've seen worse, terrible
Right.
things happen before. So, again, I actually just if you're listening on Full Press Radio or you're watching on Sportscaster, if you're watching on Sportscaster, get in on the comments and give us your opinion. Let us know what you think the suspension should be, who should be suspended, because we haven't even really talked about the Steelers part of it yet. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I did put up on our Twitter account at FPC Radio Live a poll, so go check that out. Just kind of asking you what your opinion is. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes once we get some votes in. But to be honest, and I'm never one to defend a Pouncey because I tend to don't think that they're that good at people. But I really don't have an issue with how he reacted. And I know, okay, double standard here. He was kicking him while he was down. Well, this is an appropriate reaction, emotional reaction. Let's just put it this way, to seeing what you saw. You saw, first of all, I mean, the whole incident was started because Myles Garrett took liberties and put Mason Rudolph on the ground far after what he should have. I mean, the ball was clearly out. He shouldn't have thrown him on the ground. It is what it is. He shouldn't have done that. He should have been flagged for that to begin with. So he started this. This wasn't anything else. This was him starting this situation. A little bit of scuffle ensues afterwards. That's fine. That's part of the sport. That's competition, whatever. But again, when you take it to that next level, that's when all bets are off. And the second he swung and connected with Mason Rudolph with that helmet, I don't care what the Steelers did. As long as they defended their quarterback or their player, I'm all right with that. I don't think the Pounds, even though he kicked him while he was on the ground and threw some punches, I don't think those guys should be suspended. Fined, sure. Suspended, no. I think they were doing what anyone would have done in that situation, and that is defend someone who was clearly at risk of being seriously injured. So, again, I think the NFL should come down really hard on Myles Garrett. I think the Pouncey is, and I can't remember who else was in that scrum, should not be suspended. Fined, yes, but suspended, no.
Yeah, I somewhat, I shouldn't say somewhat. I pretty much agree with everything that you said. I think there will be a suspension on the Steelers side, and and I think it will be Pouncey, simply because I think that right now what the NFL wants to do is send a message that even in a situation like that, retaliation can never be condoned. I do agree with you. I think it was in the heat of the moment. And at that point, you're trying to defend your teammate who was basically physically accosted in that situation without any provocation. I don't care what, I don't care what Mason Rudolph said. I don't care what he did. You're a professional. You jaw at it. You get into a little bit of a skirmish. You get into a scuffle. That happens. It's a part of sports. It's a part of the game. We've seen it happen in every major sports. Bench clearing brawls happen in baseball. The bench is clear in the NBA. Football, you see this a lot. Hockey, fighting is a part of the game. So it's not something where players losing their cool and doing things like this and getting into scuffles is so egregious. It's not, we're not, football is not a dull game, folks, I guess is the most appropriate way for me to put it. But when you take it a step further, like Myles Garrett did, and just continue to escalate the situation, which could have been diffused several times. I mean, let's face it. This didn't happen right away when he completed the pass and whatnot. This went back and forth a little bit, and Garrett continued to escalate this. So when you look at that, it's unfortunate. It's sad. It's probably a little disgusting to some of you as well. And, the NFL will come down on that. So I agree. I don't think there will be as heavy fines or suspensions or any type of levies on the Steelers side, but I do look and probably think that maybe a 1-game suspension for Pouncey is something the NFL may be considering here. But beyond that, I don't see the Steelers being penalized for much longer than that. But Garrett, I don't see any way he puts on shoulder pads again this year.
No, and you can. I mean, especially for a league that champions player safety, and I say that very sarcastically, because I think they've really come up short in a lot of areas when it comes to that. But for a league that champions player safety, you can't allow an act like this to go unpunished, and not only unpunished, but underpunished, because we know the NFL is not good at setting appropriate punishment. So here's one more little sound clip. Here's Mason Rudolph talking about the situation.
Pretty cowardly, kind of pretty bush league, which, there's plenty of tape out there to watch. I haven't seen it replay, but yes, I really haven't seen it or anything like that. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. Good to go.
Did he hit your flag with it?
Did he what?
Did he hit your flag with the helmet?
Go watch the replay. I don't know. I mean, I remember getting hit by a lot of people, so go take a look. There's plenty of tape out there to watch. I'm not going to speak for what may have happened.
Do you know what Clark did at all?
Do what? Once again, I mean, I got sacked once again. I mean, he had some words and kept on keeping on, and one thing led to another. So, but you can watch the tape, go back and check it out, and make your own assumptions. So.
Look, he's right. I mean, watch the tape. I mean, it's clear as day what happened. I've
Right.
I've had some people, and I am I surprised? Probably not, but a little bit, I guess. I've had people come out and try to justify or defend Myles Garrett and say, oh, well, Mason Rudolph kicked him and in the groin. It was one of them. Actually, I haven't responded to this person yet, but he says kicked him in the groin, and I'm like, he showed me a still frame. Well, clearly it's a still frame of him falling backwards, and his this is like the whole Bruins Stanley Cup final non-call. It's like, oh, he embellished and threw his legs up in the air. It's like, no, the guy lost his balance because he got hit. His leg went up and made incidental contact with part of his thigh. It was certainly not egregious or intentional, and you're trying to tell me that justifies going over, ripping his helmet off, and then using said helmet to swing at that player. So the crazies are already out there. So if you, again, want to try to sit there and justify Myles Garrett's actions, worst case scenario, even if he did get kicked, it doesn't warrant this. Again, you're going beyond the fair play rules, and even beyond the actual NFL rules. There's a within sports fair play. Look, in hockey, if you railroad someone, you better turn around and defend yourself from the other team, because you're going to get it back. Does that mean that the other team gets void of any penalties? No, it's still a penalty and it's still against the rules, but that's within the game's rules, the bigger picture rules. And this goes so far and beyond that. It's just, to me, the NFL has to act. The NFL has to act quickly, and they have to, at the very least, get him out for the rest of this year. And like you said, I mean, that's a huge blow to a Browns team that is obviously borderline not going to make the playoffs and headed towards another winless or under 500 season. So big stuff in Thursday night. So
Yeah,
never a dull
definitely.
moment.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. The NFL wanted publicity on Thursday night. This is definitely not the kind of publicity they wanted. And again, you continue to make good points, my friend, and you continue to assist and set me up for points as well.
Thanks,
See,
Mike.
there we go. Yeah, I'm glad we could spend this time together, Johnny Fontaine. But in any case, one of the other big points is Garrett himself. I mean, you put him back out on the field this year, I don't care. Even though, it may not be against the Steelers, there were going to be players that were not happy about what he did. You talk about players trying to take cheap shots. If you're Myles Garrett, the next time you come on a football field, whether that be next year, whether it be midway through the season next year, I don't know how long the suspension will be. I'm conjecturing it'll probably be through the remainder of the regular season, and then that'll be it. And I think it should be more, but that's what I'm conjecturing the NFL to do. The next time he steps on a football field, that has to be in the back of your mind. Am I going to get, is somebody going to sacrifice themselves to cheap shot me to prove a point and to essentially get back at what I did, especially the next time he plays against Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
That'll be a really, really very interesting game, because those teams that have rivalries like that, they have long memories and they will remember this. And you have to wonder if that's something that's always going to be in the back of his mind. So, yeah, just a terrible, terrible situation all the way around. And, definitely it's a shame, because it does take away from what was a pretty decent game last night. I'm not
Yeah.
going to go over the top and say, oh, it was a great game. It was a phenomenal game. No, there was a lot of sloppy play on both sides of the field, but it lived up to the hype, and we got a chance to see what the Cleveland Browns offense could look like if they started to click on all cylinders. And now it just completely overshadowed and probably was the nail in the coffin for their season.
Yeah, and look, this is not a team that I have any confidence in that can overcome any sort of adversity. We talk about the Patriots a lot on the show, and that's one of the things. Like, I'm not saying a Patriot would ever do that, but if there's any sort of adversity or tough questions or any sort of incident going on, you have a lot of confidence that the Patriots can block out that noise, players, coaches, all that, and kind of move on and kind of just focus on what they're supposed to do, and that's win football games. I don't think the Cleveland Browns can do that. They're not a team that's going to get the same questions over and over and over again and take it lightly. We saw a couple weeks ago, Baker Mayfield, obviously show that emotion and walk off and kind of have a back and forth with the reporter because he was getting asked questions he didn't want to be asked. Excuse me. So I don't think this team is capable of handling that sort of pressure. And, they're lucky that they came out with the win because it would have been even worse. It's still going to get worse, and I just don't think that they're going to overcome this. Excuse me. Now I'm starting to get the hiccups. Great thing for radio. And of course, these two teams play in a couple weeks too, if I'm not mistaken. So
They do.
Garrett has to be gone. I mean, there's going to be some tension.
Without any question. And now you also have to think about that, and to take it a step further. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here, but I guess I am in a way. Does this now open up some of some of his Cleveland teammates now for possible retaliation? I mean, we see this in sports all the time. And look, I firmly believe the cooler heads will prevail.
Yeah.
I don't think the Steelers players are going to hold the other guys on the Browns responsible. I think the only head they want to see roll right now is Myles Garrett because of what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think that maybe there's some element there that may want to take a cheap shot, and again, that would be a disgusting thing to do on behalf of the Steelers. But you can never tell. I mean, things like this set emotions in motion that really have no business anywhere on a sports field or a football field, especially. So, a bad situation, but no, under no circumstances can Myles Garrett be on that field when the Cleveland Browns play the Pittsburgh Steelers again. Just no way that can happen.
Yeah, and look, I do believe that, like you, that cooler heads will prevail, and there isn't going to be any sort of over-the-top retaliation. Do I think it's going to be physical and chippy? Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, look, it's Browns Steelers. It's a divisional game. That they're usually chippy. I just think, maybe it'll be a little extra, but certainly not a case where someone's going to go out and deliberately try to hurt someone. I think these guys respect themselves and respect the game enough, and that's one of the reasons why I think this incident, it goes above and beyond. And look, how often do you hear your quarterback or the players involved in that incident's quarterback come out and publicly, criticize that play? And look, this may not be some great leadership move by Baker Mayfield. We still don't know kind of how he handles media. I mean, this could be ultimately a mistake on his part, and he's just talking, He, you know what I'm saying? Like he it seems like he does have his finger on the pulse and kind of he understands the emotions and the situation at large. But I don't want to give him too much credit because I haven't seen enough of that through the media. So maybe he got a little lucky in this situation. But he did say the right thing, and you can kind of see where I think even the Browns players understand that, like, look, this really crossed the line, and we're not going to sit here and try to defend his actions. I mean, they're still going to, obviously have him as a teammate if he, returns next year. But yeah, it's just a bad situation. And again, I think the bigger picture here when it comes to football and team building, I think this speaks about just the undisciplined nature of just how this team is run, and that begins and ends with Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really, I think, what the heart of the matter is here. Is I talked about them possibly buying Freddie Kitchens some time. And if this win comes together and they started to string wins together, then maybe he wasn't necessarily the wrong choice that everybody thought he was. I think something like this last night absolutely cements it. There's a lack of accountability on that team. There's a lack of discipline, and that starts at the top, and that starts with the head coach. I'm not blaming Freddie Kitchens for what happened last night and saying that he was responsible for Myles Garrett's actions. Myles Garrett's a human being. He's an adult. He's definitely capable of making his own decisions. But at the same time, there has to be a level of accountability. I do not believe that you would see a player from, we mentioned the Patriots. I'll mention the Patriots. But, a lot of other teams in the league that are well coached, the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid, and some of these guys that have that command, that respect at the top of the helm to not disrespect the uniform that you put on. That's what this is all about, and that's exactly what happened. So, I think that's something to consider, and we'll see what happens there. But ultimately, I think the Browns need to move on from Kitchens. I just don't see him being the answer, and something like this only cements that point even further.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I mean, at this point, I thought they should have got rid of him last week, and this is only further proof that he's just not working out. And look, I mean, at the end of the day, he could turn out to be a pretty fine coach. He's not ready for the situation. This is a bad situation for him. So I'm not going to sit here and say he'll never be an NFL coach. I mean, that's not true. He's a smart guy. I mean, he's just got to find what he does right. And again, I just think this was a bad situation for him to begin with. So they should probably just, again, move on and realize that this season is lost, especially now without Garrett. And I didn't learn or gain much confidence from the Browns last night. I mean, I was impressed. Like I said at the start of the show, I was impressed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make me think like, oh, okay, I think they figured it out, because to me, they haven't. I have to see what happens at the end of the season before I believe in this Browns team. So it is Friday. And when we've spent an astonishing 35 minutes on this topic. So we were joking before we got into the air that hey, we're not going to have much to talk about. Well, we have plenty to talk about, because Friday means we're going to preview the rest of Week 11. Should be fun. I'm excited because
absolutely,
as a Patriots fan, bye week suck. I hate them. It's just like a long march towards it reminds me of Super Bowl week. Just because the 2-week break and all that stuff.
Right.
Something we've come so accustomed to over the years. It's just an annual tradition. It's every first weekend in February. It's Super Bowl weekend, and who are the Patriots playing? And who are the Patriots going to play this year? We do know who they played in Super Bowl 52, and that was the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's who they happen to play this week. So we get a nice little Super Bowl rematch. I think both teams are looking to. Obviously, the Patriots want to rebound after their first loss of the season to the Ravens, and the Eagles are still playing. I don't want to say desperation football. It's certainly not as desperate as they were several weeks ago, but they're still trying to figure out who they are and try to figure out an identity, because they're playing without Deshaun Jackson. Alshon Jeffrey's banged up. This defense obviously is not what it was a couple of years ago. Their secondary is pretty abysmal. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. We'll start there because, I mean, there's several pretty key games coming up this weekend that I'm excited for, and that's numero uno. So I think the Patriots are going to be ready, and by all indications, it seems, again, I'm making assumptions, and we all know what happens when you assume. You make an asshole out yourself. Remember that. Yeah, so I'm excited for that game, and I think the Patriots are going to bounce back pretty nicely. But I was assuming that N'Keal Harry is going to be making his debut, which I think a lot of Patriots fans will be happy about.
Well, all signs seem to indicate that he will be out there. He's not listed on any injury reports this week. Obviously, he's back from IR.
All signs point to yes. It would be my magic 8 ball, Mike.
Yes, the magic 8 ball. That's right. Yes, I'm going to wear the jacket like Putty too. But in any way, all signs do point to him being out there this week. He looks like he's practicing. The information coming out of Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick seems to be positive. Looks like they like what they see from the kids. So I'm anticipating him being out there. Now, that being said, he'll probably be a healthy scratch. No, just kidding, folks. I'm kidding. No, but seriously, I really do think that we will see him, and he's going to add a dimension to that Patriots offense. I think Pats fans need to pump the brakes just a little bit in terms of how much you're going to see of him and what you're going to see from him. You may not see the prolific touchdown catch that you're expecting. It's possible because this kid has the ability to do it, but they're going to ease him into the lineup and they're going to put him in position that's going to allow him to succeed long term. And I think that's the biggest key here for the Pats. Right now, if you're a Patriots fan, the thing that you're watching is the Patriots defense ability to control that RPO run pass option offense that the Philadelphia Eagles love to employ. They have a great setup for it, one of the best in the league, maybe even a little bit better than the Baltimore Ravens are set up. I'm not saying personnel-wise Baltimore has the better players, but the Eagles have a great setup. They have a tremendous offensive line. They have two great tight ends in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. They have a good three-man rushing attack led by Jordan Howard, who actually is a little banged up right now. Been listed on the injury report last couple of days with shoulder injuries, so keep a sharp eye on that if you're an Eagles fan and how effective he might be. But ultimately, in this game, I do see the Patriots being able to control that RPO offense. Bill Belichick's had 2 weeks to prepare. That's usually a recipe for disaster for their opponent. I like the Patriots in this one, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. And again, after the first loss, you want to see how this team rebounds and reacts to that. And, again, I think we all have confidence in them, despite some people throwing and saying they're the seventh best team in the league. I won't name names because I give him far too much publicity as it is for being dumb. But certain people out there obviously are buying into the fact that the Patriots, quote unquote, haven't played anyone and are not a good team, despite all the evidence to the contrary. So I do think the Patriots rebound pretty soundly, and I think it'll be a closer game by score than it actually is. I think this will be more of a the Patriots don't necessarily put them away, but they kind of control the game from start to finish, and that's I'll be perfectly happy with that. I'll just be happy to see them on the football field. Another game I'll be happy to watch, and I know this is getting all the hype. This is the big hype game this week because why not? It's two of the most exciting young quarterbacks in the league, and Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson, potentially two players fighting for the MVP award towards the end of the season, currently now as well. So you got the Texans traveling to the Ravens. I'll be interested to see how this Ravens team continues to play because it's impressive. Obviously, they beat the Patriots. And look, I want to throw this out here real quick. It's funny how many people sit here and talk about how the Patriots aren't as good because of the schedule they play. But the moment any team beats the Patriots, they're vaulted above everyone else because they beat the almighty Patriots. So what is it? Are the Patriots good or are they not? Because if they're not really good and the Ravens beat them, how is that impressive? You know what I mean? So I think about these things sometimes, generally when I'm in my office. So
absolutely. And you asked the question and you essentially answered it just yourself. It's the Patriots involved in a discussion, and anything that involves the Patriots in a discussion and maybe knocking them down a peg or trying to poke holes is something that the public is going to clamor for. They're going to want it. Mm-hmm. So, and naturally, you put something out there, the Patriots aren't that good. 31 other NFL fan bases, all their fan bases are going, yes, this is what I want. I want to know. I want the Patriots not to be good. Please don't let them be good anymore. Let me read this garbage and, get on a platform where I can say that they're no longer good and we don't have to look at Bill Belichick's face in February any longer. But, ultimately, virtue lies in the middle, folks. I'm not saying they're shoo-ins for a championship. That's not what I'm saying at all. But get used to it. They're going to be hanging around. They're still good. They're going to be in the playoffs, and they're probably going to have a deep run into the playoffs. So whether or not that means a Super Bowl berth could be, I don't know. But, something that just I would say get used to it.
Well, I say this to say that, look, I was impressed by the Ravens. I mean, no doubt. I mean, they came in and handled business against the Patriots, at home on a 2 weeks rest against a team on a break. I'm not making excuses. I'm just,
they won. The Ravens won that game. There's no question about it. I'm not going to sit here and say that they didn't do enough to win or whatever, or the Patriots completely beat themselves. No, credit all to the Baltimore Ravens in that game. They beat them on both sides of the ball.
No, and that's what I'm saying. Look, the Ravens are impressive, and I want to see what they do against another really good AFC contender. Do I think the Ravens are overall better than the Patriots? No, I don't. And you'll sit here and be like, how can you do that? Well, look, we're not basing this just off 1 week. Yes, the Ravens beat the Patriots. Good. The Patriots played 12 minutes of terrible football to start the game, and ultimately it did them in. Rematch, are you going to sit here and say, oh, all of a sudden the Ravens are the heavy favorite? No, you wouldn't. I mean, especially if it's in Gillette. So to me, the Patriots are still the best team in
Right.
the AFC. I think the Ravens are making a very strong case. I mean, at the very least, to me, they're the second best team in the league because they are beating some of these other good teams. But they've also lost to the Browns, and they've had a couple duds throughout the season that people seem to forget about. So unless we're solely judging on the most recent week and the most recent week alone, then the Patriots are the worst team in the league then, right? If we're going off one week. So I like what the Ravens are doing. I'm very excited to see this game because, again, I think it's two of the best young quarterbacks in the league. I really enjoy watching them play, and I do think it's going to be an entertaining game. I feel like the Ravens are going to win this game because they're at home. That's kind of where I'm at. Like I think if this was in Houston, I would pick the Texans. But I just feel like I can't pick against the Ravens at home, especially they're kind of on a nice run here. So I think that's going to last a little bit, and I think obviously playing the Texans at home are going to help. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like the Ravens in this one too. I do like the Baltimore ability to be able to employ those RPOs that we saw against the Patriots, and we saw, obviously against the Bengals, but I mean, that was really kind of a throwaway game for the Ravens. You expected them to come in and do exactly what they did. But I like their ability to be able to run the ball on this defense, especially minus JJ Watt, who was so integral in that Houston defense to be able to put pressure and to be able to open things up where they can get the linebackers into coverage and really stack the box and stuff the run. Now it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Houston to do that. And I think, John Harbaugh and, credit Greg Roman, who's, I think, doing an amazing job as their offensive coordinator in Baltimore this year. He's dialing up some plays that are really catching teams off guard. It's not easy to do what the Baltimore Ravens did to the Patriots defense. You got to give them some credit on that. And I give them all the credit in the world. So, yeah, I like the Ravens in this one. I think because of the fact that Deshaun Watson is such a dynamic talent, and because of the fact that he does always find a way to keep his team in the game, I think this is going to be a close one. But ultimately, I do like Baltimore at home as well.
Yeah, again, I mean, if J.J. Watt was in the mix, I'd say, okay, maybe they'd have a better chance at kind of slowing this down. But yeah, look, it's going to be a close game in my opinion, or at least I hope so. It's in the 1:00 hour, so I'm hoping for a very exciting afternoon game. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think the Ravens are rolling right now. I think they're going to win this game and continue the build on the hype. Now, again, that doesn't tell me that they're going to be this, knockdown, drag out, tough team at the end of the year. I mean, there's still a lot to go, and maybe they come back to earth a little bit because at the end of the day, I still think the Patriots are a better team, and I'll fight anyone over that. So go ahead. Hit me up on Twitter. It's at IGLEN31. I'm ready to go. I've had a lot of coffee today. So, moving on there again, we have the Ravens, Texans, big game. Patriots, Eagles, big game. I would say Indianapolis, Jacksonville's kind of a big game too. More so for Indianapolis. They're obviously reeling a bit without Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if we've had any update whether or not he's playing or not. So if you know that information, please let me know. I would love to hear it. But look, this is a big game for Indianapolis. If they have any hopes of staying in this wild card race, they have to win this game. They're sitting at 5-4 right now. The Jags are 4-5. They're getting Nick Foles back. The Jags are going to be inspired, and they probably look at it and say, "Look, we're within reach for a playoff spot." So you're not going to get a Jacksonville team that's going to roll over, and likely would play a little bit inspired as their starting quarterback returns. So Indy's got a tough matchup at home.
Yeah, Indy does have a tough matchup at home. Don't forget, this is Nick Foles' comeback party as well. So, you're looking at a Jacksonville team that had some expectations this year and does have some talent coming into play, an Indianapolis team that's been up and down lately. They're getting Jacoby Brissett back. It looks like he will be under center on Sunday, and that's great news for the Indianapolis Colts because we saw Brian Hoyer, try to take snaps. And I know we've talked about Hoyer and we've talked about what he's, been able to do in terms of scout team acumen and being a good backup. But I think you saw why he remains a backup in this league and not a starter. He can give you starting minutes. He can spot start for you, but he's not a sustained talent to be able to do that in this league. So Brissett coming back adds another dimension. I think the Indianapolis Colts are going to try to ride their running game this week, and I look for that, especially with Brissett. Maybe they look for him to extend plays with his legs, try to get a little bit mobile, and see if he can do some of the things that we know he's capable of doing. This is going to be a tough one for both teams because I think that both teams right now are playing for their. Don't forget, these two teams are technically still in the hunt for a playoff spot. So I give the slight edge to Indy because I just love the way their defense is situated, and I think they're better equipped to handle a Nick Foles run team than maybe even a Gardner Minshew team. I think Minshew may have shown them some looks that could have confused Indy a little bit. I like the way their defense matches up with Jacksonville's offense, so I give the slight edge to Indy in this one, but that's going to be a good game. That could be a sleeper one to watch this week, folks.
Yeah, again, like you said, there's a lot of stakes on the line. I don't think I don't think the division it's obviously not, the door isn't closed on it yet, but, for all intents and purposes, Houston's probably going to win that division. So you're fighting for a wild card, and the Steelers losing, that's a good thing for those two teams because the Steelers were making some noise, and if they move to 6-4, all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, well, they kind of control their own destiny when it comes to reaching the playoffs. And then you have to throw in the fact that Buffalo right now, I believe, occupies that spot. And you have Oakland, who's playing a relatively soft schedule, starting with the Bengals this week, the rest of the year. So the Raiders, I think, we talked about it yesterday and over the last few days. I mean, they've continued to impress and
without question, they're very well positioned.
Yeah, yep. And look, I mean, if they do what they're supposed to do. You could be looking at a Raiders team in the playoffs, which I don't know how many people would have picked it heading into the year, especially how things started last year and how things have gone, to start, the preseason this year with all the drama and all that stuff. So hats off to them. And at what point do you start throwing, John Gruden's hat into the Coach of the Year talk?
I think he's already there. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's at the top of the list, but I think he has to be in the discussion. I mean, you can't go through what this team has gone through for the last year and a half, end up in a position where you're fighting for a playoff spot, despite the fact that most people thought that you'd be cellar dwelling and basically, fighting for that number 1, 2, 3, 4 pick and that being the worst, to being in the position that you're in without saying enough about what the head coaching and the coaching staff is doing in Oakland, especially with the turmoil of them moving too. Yeah. I mean, let's not forget that does have an impact on teams. I know they say, oh, well, it's that's superfluous. The teams don't focus on that on the field. It does have an impact. Mm-hmm. I think you saw that when the Los Angeles Chargers moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. It had an impact when you take a look at what it did to that team, and they knew, that things were going to be different and they were playing in a different environment. That's what I was waiting for. I was buying time for that. I was waiting for it, and I couldn't wait to hear it.
It was slow trying to play it, so it should have played a couple seconds ago, but it kind of froze. But
it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's all good. See, that's it. I honestly, I have a theory that our listeners would probably just rather listen to that for an hour. Probably.
I would. I love that song. I love that song. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I do too. It is one of the greatest hype songs in the world. So you gotta love it.
I get so into it. I'll play it to close out the show again today.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and our listeners thank you as well, my friend.
Yeah, and guess what? I also have this. So if you decide to swear, and we were using this, we Chris and I did this for the Big Bad Bruins podcast the other day that we recorded because we were kind of concerned that our emotions were going to get the best of us. So I was ready to zap it out with a little gong.
Take takes you back to the youth, my friend. The days where the dead man would sit up after walking the ropes. Gotta love it.
Oh, I love it. And what can I do but just play that over again, Mike?
Mike, what can I do?
What can I do? What can I do, Mike? What can I do?
You can act like a man.
There you go. Oh, that's great stuff. Now, where were we? we're talking.
We were somewhere. Was we still on the air?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't pressed anything. There we go. Let's refocus.
There
All right.
we go. That's it.
We're talking about the Chargers, kind of in relation
this
to
just
the
completely
Raiders.
off the rails.
Yes.
Try to be serious, talking about the Chargers, Raiders, and all. Then all of a sudden we end up, talking about the San Diego Superchargers song. Then we're into the Undertaker, and then I'm doing Godfather impressions. That's just a typical day here on FPC Radio Live, folks.
Now I got a question for you though, Mike.
Do I scare you?
Do I scare you, Mike?
I don't know. You're a pretty dangerous man there, George Costanzo. That's
my middle name. Just like Baker Mayfield. Hey, look, see, that's how we bring all this back to the middle, and that's how we refocus everything. So, Michael. No. Oh, okay. Yep, you're back. Yeah, we had one of those Rhode Island.
Back,
yep.
Yes.
We had one of those Rhode Island internet issues. So they're still working on they're a little state, so they have little internet power. So it's okay. We deal with these issues. We know how to deal with them. I understand. We got it figured out. So back to the topic, because we've quickly run out of time. We got about 5 minutes left in the show. Your gut tells you Raiders are probably going to win this game. I mean, it's the Bengals. So
I would say so. I really, I don't see a situation where the Bengals are going to come out on top on this. I think I like the way the Raiders are playing, and I love their energy, and I think this starts a good stretch for them.
And this is another game I'm going to be really interested in, is the Saints. Now they're like, okay, they're playing the Bucs. Well, we know the Bucs. They're capable of playing an incredible game, and they're also capable of playing a horribly awful game, all within the same 60 minutes. So who knows what we're going to get out of the Bucs? So we're going to get this high-potent, high-scoring offense. Then you know what? The Saints might be in trouble after coming off that bad loss. And if they drop another one, that's when I think, again, you're gonna start hearing some things. You're just saying. You might hear a couple of rumblings, especially when you're 0-2 and now looking at like a wild card contending team. So I think that's going to be a pretty big game. It's hard for me to pick against the Saints. I'm not going to overreact to one loss, but my confidence level for them in this game is a little low. So how do you see, real quickly, how do you see this game playing out?
Could be a trap game. I'm glad that you said that. This could definitely be a trap game for them because Tampa Bay is definitely capable of stringing together some good plays, and they can make a game out of this. I still have enough belief in the coaching staff in New Orleans. Sean Payton will have his team ready on both sides of the ball. I think they come out on top, but this could be a lot closer than people think. If they do struggle in this, even if New Orleans wins this and they struggle, could get interesting. Some of the chatter may start to get interesting around New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. And the final game that really jumps off the map, and we'll focus a little bit more on this on Monday, is the Chiefs and the Chargers. Yeah. So naturally, it gives us a chance to once again play that little sound clip. Look, the Chargers are at home. The Chiefs are reeling right now. I honestly, I might have to wait and say my prediction for Monday and kind of see how things play out over the weekend. But the Chiefs could be finding themselves in a lot of trouble. And look, I brought up the Raiders in terms of fighting for a wild card. If the Chiefs lose this game and the Raiders beat the Bengals, wild card is in the back burner. You're talking about a division title for the Raiders. So there's a lot at stake for the Chiefs at this game. So I'm really going to be interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, there really is. And don't forget, this Chargers team is not a pushover, folks. Their defense is well equipped to handle a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, especially a banged-up Patrick Mahomes. And I know he had a tremendous game last week, and their loss really was not put on his shoulders. But keep in mind that when you have two formidable pass rushers, the way the Chargers employ that defense, plus an improved secondary that's starting to show some life again, could be an interesting one in Mexico City on Monday night.
Right.
That should be an interesting one.
That's right. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we get another great primetime game because I feel like, most of the time this season so far we've gotten some pretty good primetime games, especially on Monday night. So hopefully we're going to get another one of those this week. So
I just want to hear the song again. I think that's what everybody wants. If they win on Tuesday morning, yeah.
I'll play it regardless. Trust me. I mean, it's going to become such a part of our daily routine. You may get sick of it, and actually, you know what? You probably won't. But look, I have a feeling we're going to be talking.
If they're listening to us right now, I don't think they get sick of anything. No. I think if we have loyal listeners, these are people that'll listen to anything right now.
They would have tuned out 45 minutes ago if that was the case.
Yeah,
so,
very, very true.
No, look, at the end of the day, I think the Chargers, they're going to... That's right. They're going to dazzle out there. No, okay. Maybe not, but this is maybe the 2006 Chargers might dazzle. This team kind of grinds and grinds wins out. But we'll see. It'll be an interesting game, but we will obviously talk about that more on Monday. We will obviously review all of what happened on Sunday, and then hopefully by Monday we will have a more conclusive idea of what's going to happen with Myles Garrett. And of course, I mean, look, Colin Kaepernick workout is on Saturday, and we know which teams are going to be there, so we're going to talk about that. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll get a little bit of Antonio Brown news coming up. So we'll see. But until then, we're going to have to say goodbye. So with that said, Mike, I would like to say thank you for another great week of this show. It's been great.
There really has been, and I thank you again for another great week, my friend. Hopefully next week we'll be able to get the Sportscaster split screen going, and when Ian plays that song, you can watch us nod our heads and dance like buffoons. That could be very well worth it, yeah.
And right on cue, here it is. So, folks, thank you very much once again for joining us for another great episode of FPC Radio Live. Follow me on Twitter. It's at IGLEN31. He is at MDABATE FPC. We will be back Monday at 8 a.m. Till then, have a great weekend, folks.